Calificas para ser legal. ¿Quieres saber? Solo llama al abogado Andres Mejer.
Good morning and welcome to this English installment of our radio show Para Ser Legal, to be legal. Today we're going to be talking about school districts that have been charged with discriminating against immigrants. We're going to talk about our Supreme Court, how they dismissed almost 800,000 cases and why they would do that. And lastly, we're going to give an example of a family-based petition and show how fraud can have an impact. An allegation of fraud from the 90s can affect someone today from getting his or her green card, 25, 30 years later. My name is Andres Mejer, and I am an published author, an immigration attorney, and I'm here to help as much as I can with episodes like this, explaining the law in simple terms. Now, let's first talk about school districts that are accused of discriminating against immigrants. What does that mean? The Supreme Court of the U.S. decided many, many years ago that a school cannot discriminate versus groups of people. What does that mean? If I wanted to take my son to the public school because he's 7 years old, the government has no choice but to educate him, has no choice but to accept him. They can't say, well, you're an immigrant, we don't want you. You can't come here. Your son can't come here. They're not allowed to do that. So what are these, the complaint filed by the ACLU, it doesn't, what they say is, the school district isn't flat out saying we won't take any immigrants. No, they're saying the requirements to inscribe your son or daughter are difficult and some can't qualify. What does that mean? Well, these 12 school districts are saying you need to show us government-issued ID. Government-issued ID is a driver's license or a residential identification card. It says that you live in a certain area. Pretty much, you need your 6 points of identification. Now, as many of you know, if you're here without permission in the United States, you don't have those 6 points of identification because you don't have a social security number. You don't have an American passport or a birth certificate from the United States. So you're not going to be able to get those 6 points, so you're not going to be able to to get a driver's license. Consequently, you won't be able to inscribe your son or daughter. Now, these school districts, when commented on, said, no, we don't have such a policy. We accept everyone. We simply require that you prove you are who you say that you are, and this is just an example of some of the documents that we accept. So that is now working through its way through the courts. Then the 12 school districts are Northern Valley Regional High School in Bergen County, Belmar in Camden County, not Monmouth, Sterling Regional High School in Camden, Winslow Township in Camden, East Orange Community Center in Essex, West New York in Hudson. Seagirt is the only municipality charged, only school district that's charged in the county of Monmouth. Hording Township, which is Morris County, Watching Hills Regional, Somerset County, and Montague, which is also Sussex County. So lawsuit says each school district has a discriminatory policy by not allowing for kids who in many cases are born in the United States and are U.S. citizens to be inscribed because parents don't have documentation that they are who they say that they are. Now, when I was a kid, my parents just showed their passport. As long as it was valid, that was sufficient. And that's true for most school districts in the state of New Jersey. Here are 12 that apparently that's just not good enough. They will likely lose that case. It's pretty much an indefensible policy. Chances are they will modify their policies and stipulate out of the lawsuit. That's what I predict is going to happen. Now, common misconception. Where does most of illegal immigration come from? It's actually not from the border. It is the majority of illegal immigration is visas that overstay, kind of like my family did. We came from Chile. We had tourist visas. We were granted 6 months, and we stayed 30 years. So in fiscal year 2017, which ended October 1st September 28, 2017, because the federal government goes from October 1st to the end of September. That's the fiscal year. So 2017 fiscal year, 700,000 immigrants entered with a visa. As of September 30, 2017, Department of Homeland Security says 600,000 of those were still in the U.S. Now, some of those may have extended their stay. Some of them may have transferred to a different visa. Some of them may now have a petition pending, meaning they've overstayed, but they're looking to adjust and they're looking to get legal status, and they may very well get it. So, but 600,000 of them is a big number. Just to give you an idea, same fiscal year, how many people were apprehended at the border? Just over 300,000. So more than double, or almost double, those that entered illegally, entered legally, and overstayed, just like my family did in the 80s. Now, in terms of location, where in the past couple of years the majority of immigrants are apprehended or present themselves to apply for asylum or some other form of relief, the Rio Grande area in Texas, 528,000. Tucson, Arizona, 166,000. And El Paso, again in Texas, 98,000. So those are the top three areas in the country where immigrants are being either presented or apprehended. Now, running down the list, Supreme Court of New Jersey did something interesting last week. They dismissed 787,000 old cases. Some of these were they had order of arrest for not appearing in court, they had court-ordered driver's license suspensions, which means until they remedy that old case, the Motor Vehicle Commission will not renew their driver's license. That's a big deal for a lot of people. Now, these charges were before January 1st, 2013. So this is more than 15-year-old cases. What's not included? Drug possession, DUI, driving without a license, or driving with expired license, reckless driving, failure to leave the scene. So there's it's not every case. It's the very, very minor. For example, parking ticket. Maybe a noise ordinance where you just never appeared in court. Those charges are now being dismissed. They've now been adjudicated. Don't forget, New Jersey has 515 municipal courts throughout the country. Throughout the state. They issue over 6 million cases per year. Here we're talking about just over 750,000 cases that were more than 15 years old. So if your license is suspended because it's something really, really old, contact the Department of Motor Vehicles. Perhaps you can get your license reissued and that suspension lifted. If you have questions, give us a call. Happy to talk more in detail. My name is Andres Mejer. I'm an immigration attorney. Offices in Eatontown and not Long Branch anymore, Eatontown and Lakewood. If you want to give us a call, it's 888-888-0307. Happy to discuss your particular situation. So now let's get to the good stuff. I have a client, we'll call him Giovanni. So we're going to talk about specifically what are Giovanni's options. What can he do? How can he achieve legal status? And how does an allegation of marriage fraud from the 90s affect him today, 25 years later? So give you some context. Giovanni, we'll just say he came from El Salvador. He didn't, but for purpose of conversation, assume that he did, in 1994. In 1995, he filed for asylum. Said he was a victim of a political opinion. He was going to be persecuted because of the group that he belonged to. And he wrote a very detailed narrative. Now, we ordered a background search. We ordered all the documents immigration has on him. And there was no decision ever on his asylum. He says he never received any interview notice. He was never interviewed. There was never questions about it. So the file shows an interview notice, but no indication of whether he showed up or not. No indication of a dismissal or a denial. He was not referred to an immigration court. It's like it never happened. In 1997, he divorced his then first wife, whom he had 3 kids with, and married his second wife, who was a U.S. citizen, and she filed a petition for him. Now, best as I can tell, they didn't have, well, they had an attorney, but it doesn't look like the attorney went with them to the interview, and it doesn't look like the attorney did a very good job, just based on the documents that I saw in the file. It's not an attorney that I know of or have ever heard of in the past. He likely has retired by now, or to be honest, I don't know. I couldn't find any record of him still practicing law today. Now, went to the interview. At the interview, again, I didn't see any indication that he was with counsel. They separated the couple. The husband and wife were interviewed separately. They were given the same questions, and suffice to say that they did bad is an understatement. They did terrible for whatever reason. They were asked questions like, how did you get here today? What side of the bed did you wake up on? Or do you normally sleep on? Who showered first? What gas bill, what company do you guys have for gas? Do you rent or do you own? How much do you pay rent? Do you use birth control? That's as personal as they got, but question after question, this couple gave very different answers. Now, I happen to know my client gets very nervous. I happen to know that he's not very good at names and dates for a variety of reasons. It's possible that's what happened in the 90s. I can't say. The government did not make a decision on his family-based case at the moment. They said you'll get something in the mail. Well, in the mail, they got what's called a notice of intent to deny. And we have a copy of that letter, and that letter informed Giovanni and his wife that the government believed their marriage was a sham, that they were lying, and they said, listen, we're going to deny your petition unless you give us more proof, and here's some of the stuff that you can provide us. Now, by the time that decision came, Giovanni and his wife were separated. They got divorced 2 or 3 years later. They never responded to the notice of intent to deny, and immigration obviously denied his petition. So now here we are in 2002, the petition is denied, he's divorced. Fast forward to 2016. Now Giovanni has a son who's 21 years old and was born here in the US. He's been here for many, many years. His son can now apply for him. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means he can get his green card. Now, we've discussed in the past family-based petitions and how the challenge really is not necessarily document the relationship, but often it comes to where can you change your status, or if you can change your status from, illegal immigrant to lawful permanent resident. Now, adjustment of status is usually, or change of status is in one of two scenarios. One, it happens, he gets interviewed inside the United States and gets his green card inside the United States. The second option is what's called consular process, in which he's going to appear for an interview at an embassy or consulate, usually in the country where he was born, but it doesn't have to be. But it does have to be outside the United States. The challenge is for anybody who's been in the US without permission, meaning illegal or a visa overstay. If they were accumulated more than 1 year without permission in the US, when he leaves, he can't come back for 10 years unless he applies and receives a waiver. Waivers exist, but not in every situation. Why? Well, that's what the government decided. But so in a situation like Giovanni, we're looking at, okay, his son is the one applying for him. Well, his son is not a basis for a waiver. He needs a spouse or a parent who's a U.S. citizen or green card holder, and show how he or she or they will suffer extreme hardship if they're separated from him for 10 years. Now, in Giovanni's situation, his parents are lawful permanent residents. Not immediate relatives, which they're not U.S. citizens, and he's an adult. That's why parents didn't petition for him. But that's why his son did and not his parents. But it is a basis for a waiver. So in Giovanni's situation, what do we have? We have the possibility to change status in the U.S., maybe. We have consular process, and we have the ability of a waiver. So let's go back to Giovanni changing in the U.S. Under what circumstances? He did not enter legally. So, to change in the U.S. needs legal entry, an immediate relative. He does not have the legal entry. So there's an exception, something that's called 245I, the Life Act. The problem is that law expired April 30th, 2001. So he needs to show that there was a petition that was approvable when filed, and that it was filed before the Life Act expired, which was in 2001. Now, he had in 1997, his then wife, now ex-wife, did file for him. But he's going to have to show that that petition was approvable when filed. And there's some problems there, because there's a decision, there's a notice of intent to deny that was filed, indicating that the immigration believed that marriage was a sham. So Giovanni started his case under Obama, but it's now under Trump administration who's adjudicating the petition. And there's any of you that have been listening to my radio show, or have read anything I've written in the past 2 years, knows that it is a whole lot harder to achieve legal status today than it was in the past. But even under Obama, this would have been a difficult case, simply because the requirements are, if you're going to change your status in the U.S., you need to show your petition was approvable when it was filed, that he is 245I eligible. Now, what's the change? Well, today, if he files, which he did, and if immigration denies him his petition, 100% of the time, he's going to be placed in removal proceedings. Well, that's a big deal, because immigration judges in many ways have been neutered by this administration. Immigration judges don't have discretion like they used to. They can't remand the case back to immigration to review that petition. They have to have a trial on it. So today, Giovanni has a decision. He can continue with the 245I process, provide some whatever proofs he has 25 years later that that marriage was legitimate, and hope that the supervisor assigned to his file is going to approve his petition and give him his green card. So, pros and cons. What happens if he gets denied at the USCIS level? He will be placed in removal proceedings, and then he has other things he can file for. Maybe cancellation removal, the 10-year law. Even though there is no 10-year law. He can renew his asylum claim if he's so inclined, and he can try to continue his family-based petition and have a hearing in front of the judge to show that that prior hearing, that prior family-based petition was real. But he needs to be a good witness. And he was nervous in the 90s, he's nervous now. Giovanni needs to decide, and his attorney needs to guide him, would he make a good witness? What is his likelihood of success? Now, the other option is, because there is no decision today, he can withdraw his request to change status in the U.S. and make a request that he be interviewed at his embassy, the American embassy in his home country, in this case, El Salvador. So the moment he does that, he takes the case away from USCIS. So they're obviously not going to approve because he withdraws the petition, nor will they deny because he's going to be leaving the U.S. and have that consular process. But before he leaves, he's going to file for his waiver. That's the decision that Giovanni has. It's our role as attorneys to give him the options, not to decide it for him. So, considerations. If Giovanni makes good witness, if he's credible, if he's self-assured, if he says, listen, this is what happened. Look, not every marriage works out. We were on rocky ground. We tried to work through it, but unfortunately, it just was not successful, and it ended in 2002. That's it. It was legitimate. I loved her. She loved me, but we couldn't get. That wasn't enough for our situation. If he could do that, then he should continue with the 245I process, with the I-485, and fight to the end to get his green card here in the U.S. If he's not sure whether he would be a good witness, either in front of a judge or in front of immigration, if he does get nervous, if he's unclear about timelines and dates and what happened and when and where, well, if he's unclear, an officer, just like a judge, could find him that he's maybe unclear because he's lying, and for that reason deny his petition, in which case he's in removal proceedings, and a more or less simple process, there is no simple process in immigration, but a more or less routine filing becomes very complicated. And now we go from a $5,000 to $7,000 case to a $15,000 to $25,000 case with potential appeals all the way up to the Supreme Court. So that becomes very dangerous in some respects. The alternative is, well, you know what? He's going to have to leave the U.S., he's going to have to apply for a waiver, and he's going to have to go to the embassy in his country. That's the option that he has. And it really is a case-by-case basis. Again, if he's a strong candidate, if he's a good witness, if he's self-assured, if he can present well, you continue and you fight for your right to stay in the U.S. If he's unsure, I'm not saying that he lied, and I'm not saying it was a marriage fraud. To be honest, I don't know. I wasn't there. That was 25 years ago. But he would know. If he has any doubts, so there is less risk of removal proceedings if he files for the waiver and he goes outside the U.S. to his country. But he's the only person that can decide that, but he has to decide, and he has to decide fast. Otherwise, he's going to place, the decision will be taken from him. My name is Andres Mejer. I'm an immigration attorney and a published author. I hope you enjoyed this version of our radio show, which now we're doing in English. Thank you very much. And until next time, if you have any questions, feel free to give us a call, 888-888-0307. You can find us on Facebook, on our blog at andresmejerlaw.com. If you want a copy of our book, just make a request either on Facebook or give us a call at the office. Thank you very much. Till next.
Calificas para ser legal, ¿quieres saber? Solo llama al abogado Andres Mejer.